So right now I'm in the process of doing the fourth post for the HG Grimoire for the start to finish. And I've already finished priming the all the different parts for the kit and about to move on to shading. And so I've been thinking a little more about, shading and my relationship with shading kits. If you've been a long time follower of me on the blog, or maybe you read the Reddit posts every now and again, you've probably noticed that some of my comments have indicated that I'm not a huge fan of shading, and that's the primary reason why you don't see shading in many of my kits. For example, the Gyaradoga on the far left here is pretty representative of my style, if I have a style, and that would just be a clean built kit, without any shading to it. And I do that just because it's my preference. I just like the way a painted kit looks, saying shading. But the other three kits that I have here, the Vic Viper from Kotobukiya, the HG Goof Custom, and the 135 Hardgraph Zaku head, are all examples of kits I've shaded. And I guess I kind of wanted to discuss like when I decide to shade something and when I decide to just kind of do a clean build like the Gyaradoga. I know that shading is it's a really popular technique. A lot of people just getting into the hobby really like the way it looks, and there are a lot of really good shading or modelers out there that can do shading, and a lot of them have a post on Reddit, and their work is quite nice, and I can definitely respect their ability, and in some cases I think it even looks good on kits. But me as a builder, it's just not a technique that I really want to do all that often. But so anyways, I figured I'd talk about the times that I do shade my kits, and the three kits that I have here each represent a different reason that I decided to shade them. So the first kit I wanted to look at is the Kotobukiya Vic Viper. And the reason why I decided to shade this kit is because out of the box, when you assemble this thing, it's a very bland looking kit. Even when you just do a basic paint scheme on it and apply the decals, it still leaves a lot to be desired. And I think that's mostly just due to the simplicity of it. It's just, for the most part, a lot of facets. Some curved stuff like the helmet, the cockpit area down here, but it just kind of lacked something. And what I decided to do here was just kind of do the traditional quote-unquote type of shading that you see in a lot of different kits, where the modeler will highlight the edges using a darker color, a pre-shade color, and then spray their intended color on top of it. And with this kit in particular, just because of kind of how bland I thought it was out of the box, I really actually like the way this came out, even though there are some inconsistencies. Oh, excuse me. Even though there are some inconsistencies with the thickness and the saturation of the shading, I'm still happy with the way it looks. I don't really have much more to say about this kit other than that. I think this is the type of shading that most people think of when they think of a pre-shaded model, where there's that highlight along all the panel lines, and you see it on a lot of military models too. It's not just exclusive to mecha models. The 135 Zaku Hardgraph kit is another attempt at shading, this time for a different purpose. I used a similar technique on my Master Grade 1/100 Zaku 2 that I did the Rambaral custom color scheme on. I don't believe that kit came out very well, to be quite frank. I like some aspects of that model, but I believe the shading around some of the battle damage on that kit wasn't, particularly great. With this kit, instead of doing battle damage to it because it's a fairly small kit, I decided to do a weathering scheme on it. So there's some enamel washes and some Tamiya pastels and some other things going on, but one of the techniques that I used is just a very basic shading where I applied darker colors towards the bottom, under the power pipes, here along the base of the kit. Here goes the top of it. On the lower surfaces, just to create some depth. And I think it works. I'm fairly happy with this kit. This is like one of the models where I don't think I'd ever really consider selling it, just because I like the way it turned out, even if the weathering on it may not necessarily be realistic. I like the style of it, so I like it for its stylistic qualities. Well, this is kind of another example of when I use shading. It's just for weathered things, because machinery that exists in real life that is left outside to the elements, the colors on them become inconsistent due to sun bleaching or grime collecting, or just simple wear and tear where the material is worn off. So there are going to be those differences in the paint color, and that's kind of why I decided to use it on a model like this. This shading, by the way, unlike the Vic Viper, where I'd consider that shading, with shading the Vic Viper and all the geometry, you kind of have to be more precise, let's say, about how it's applied, because you're enhancing the geometry of the kit. With something like this, where it's being done for weathering purposes, I find it's easier to shade because it's more of an organic process, for lack of a better term. You're just sort of shading it to how you think it would react in the environment. So there's less of a structured appearance. So I found with this I could just kind of go back and reshade something if I didn't like it, or push something a little bit further, or tone it down, and I didn't really have to worry about adjusting shading in other areas because, well, I didn't need to. This HG Goof Custom is really kind of the last example for the way I use shading, and this is more or less, this is the least frequent type of shading that I do. In fact, I think this is the only kit that I've ever really done this sort of thing to, where it's simply stylistic. I decided that I wanted it to be just a part of this, custom unit's paint scheme. So for whatever reason, this pilot decided to add a slight fade around the skirts, and to a lesser extent around the feet, the forearms, and the shoulders. Unfortunately, what I found out, on camera is, the contrast really isn't all that strong. So if I focus this in on the shoulder, you can't really see it. I can make it out here because I'm standing right in front of it, and I'm looking at it maybe in a different light if the camera is adjusting the white balance or something. But it is obviously, it's fairly clear on the skirt, so you can kind of get an idea of that. I found that this is kind of similar to the organic nature of the weathering, or the weathered shading that I had on the 135 head. I found I could be a little more freeform with this as well. And while there was a certain consistency to maintain, like around the skirts, so the shading only goes, so far up, I just found that this was an easier type of shading for me to do, because I didn't feel necessarily pressured to make sure it was more symmetrical, like the Vic Viper. That combined with some of the other stylistic choices, like the little blips of yellow paint on the Gatling gun barrels, or on the sorry, as I adjust this, or on the chest in those areas, that it was just, you know, part of the custom scheme. So, you know, it wasn't something that necessarily had to be a certain way. It was just kind of done that way because, you know, maybe that's what the pilot wanted. So I just wanted to, you know, take this video and kind of talk about shading and how I've used it in the past. I don't really ever see myself wanting to shade all of my kits. I certainly prefer the kind of clean style that I've you know, showcased on my site so far. It's just a personal preference. I don't have anything against shading. I think there are a lot of talented modelers out there that produce some wonderful shading. It's not necessarily a technique that I personally care for, and that's really all there is to it. That being said, you know, I am going to discuss I'm not even going to call it understanding. It's very limited understanding of shading in the HG Grimoire series, and I'll show you what I think would be most appropriate for the kit. We are kind of going to do a not necessarily weathered or battle damage, but sort of a lived-in season kind of look for that kit. So I imagine the style is going to be closer to the 135 Zaku head than it is, you know, the Vic Viper or the Goof Custom. So hopefully, you know, when that post goes live and the videos that accompany it go live, you know, you guys are going to be able to, you know, glean something helpful out of it. I'm sure there are going to be, you know, some shading modelers out there that are going to look at it and say, well, that doesn't really make sense, or I don't do it that way, and that's fine. You know, as I mentioned, it's not a technique I'm super familiar with or really all that great at, but you know, it's part of the hobby, and you know, it's definitely a good skill to have in your toolbox, especially if you get into weathering or you're really, you know, fond of that particular sort of look. So anyways, it's just a quick video, and thanks for watching. Bye.